Quilting Tale today. My name is Shaylin and I'm going to do a long overdue update on my quilt-alongs that I've been working on and a little bit of sew and tell because I've fallen behind on my quilt-alongs because of some other projects I've been doing. So I'll show you both of those and just where I'm at in all these free quilt-alongs that I've been doing. As some of you may know, I'm a teacher, and so as soon as school got out, my family and I headed to Montana to go visit family and see my brother-in-law get married, and we just went around to some different parts of Montana and explored. It was a great trip, and on that trip my mother-in-law and I worked on a quilt for my brother-in-law and his new wife, and so we spent a whole week just setting up stations all over her house, making a quilt called Fresh. It's a pattern by Camille Roskelly from her book Simply Retro, and it's a monochromatic kind of black and white gray quilt. And so we just spent a week just working on it nonstop. You know, my husband would come upstairs if he saw us watching TV or something saying, "Why aren't you still sewing?" And so we really were trying to get it done in a timely way, and I've never worked on a quilt in such a short amount of time and, you know, made a king-size quilt. So it was nice to have someone to help make it, and it was wonderful to make it with my mother-in-law in particular because she's the one who taught me how to quilt and got me into it. So this was the first kind of collaboration that we did, and it turned out beautifully. So I had brought a big bag full of my fabric and supplies to just work on, thinking I'd have all this time while we were there to leisurely put together some of these weekly blocks I've been doing, or even the monthly ones. I just brought all my fabric and I didn't touch any of them except for one while I was there. And so since coming back home, I have caught up a little bit on the quilt-alongs, but I've also made some other projects that I want to show you. I was able to visit lots of different quilt shops in Montana. Helena, Bozeman, Whitefish, Kalispell. They all had some fabulous quilt shops, and I picked up different fabrics at each of them. And one that I really loved was this glow-in-the-dark fabric. It's from Michael Miller Fabrics, and I believe it's called Light Up My World. I'll have to double check that and link it down below or something. But it's this glow-in-the-dark fabric. There were fireflies and campfires, and my girls really liked the glow-in-the-dark aspect, and so this coincided really well with seeing a tutorial from Quilt Addicts Anonymous. There was a tutorial on how to do a French seam pillowcase. So I bought a yard of 2 different glow-in-the-dark fabrics to make some coordinating pillows. So you see them here. This one has the campfire flames and a little bit of the lightning bugs in the jar on the trim there, and then this one is the reverse of that. So a yard of each made both of these, and then I just got this kind of peachy colored grunge fabric to be the flange because I thought it picked up the flame colors here in the fabric. So these work really well. They've already been washed and they glow really well when they're kind of charged in the daytime. They're really fun to see at night, and so I just love these pillows. They were really easy to make. My first time making a standard size pillowcase, and yeah, I'm definitely going to make more of these, maybe for holidays or to match my different quilts I've made. So yeah, a really fun, simple project, and like I said, it's a free pattern on Quilt Addicts Anonymous website, so I will link that in the bottom too. So I finished my Riley Blake Designs block challenge top. I had shown that before and had mentioned I was going to do a pieced backing using that free bird pattern, the pieced bird block, and I did a video a couple weeks ago about how to do the math to enlarge or reduce blocks, and so after doing that video I actually pieced the bird and used some of the bonus blocks that came out of making the front blocks to make a pieced backing. This is the first time I've done a pieced backing before. This is using mostly for the backing fabric. It's a Lori Holt cookbook fabric, and I will post a picture too so you can see the whole thing, but you can see the bird made it there. And then I used a bunch of half square triangles that I had trimmed down to make a design, just a new block here, and some of the other pieces were also added in. So like I said, I'll show you the whole thing up close in just a moment here. I used a coral, because this is my coral and aqua quilt. So I used a coral stripe binding, and I just needed 2 fat quarters to have enough binding for this size quilt. It's about 55.5 by 55.5, I believe, with the layout. And this layout I posted on my blog at aquiltingtale.com, the fabric requirements to do this layout here with the 9 patch cornerstones. So let me show it to you close up so you can see some of the quilting on it and some of the detail in the backing as well. So here's the quilting up close. I ended up going with a kind of aqua seafoam thread color that has a little bit of a sheen to it. And since I have so many floral prints in this quilt, there's a flower, and for the leaves it's kind of this feathering leaf effect, and so that's just repeated all over. Some of the flowers are larger than others, but it looks really nice, nothing that dominates too much. And I'm looking forward to just washing this one and getting it that real crinkled look here. You can see some of these hourglass blocks are in my backing. I had a spare one of those, and then same thing with this one right here. Here's one of them, and then I just took some half square triangles to make a flying geese unit. There's a close-up of that one that I just made with a bunch of smaller half square triangles. Piece of the bird there. The quilting shows up really nicely in the white portions. Off to the side on the backing fabric, it's this kind of a busier fabric, so the quilting doesn't stand out so much there, but there's some more of those extra hourglass blocks. And there's my label that I did, just commemorating the block challenge and when it was finished. And then I just have my name in place where I completed it there. I also have demonstrated how to make labels like this using a piece of the selvage to trim the label. If you find a saying or something that you like, so plant kindness, gather love, it was the right color, and I like the sentiment of the saying for this quilt. So that label is on there along with my coral stripe binding. I couldn't find a backing that had a lot of coral and aqua in it, so I got the cookbook fabric here because I do use red a lot in this quilt as a secondary color. It had the aqua, the gray, and the white, so it had a lot of the main colors I was using, just didn't have the coral, but I made sure to include the coral in the label, the binding, and the bird's wing here to make sure that that coral and aqua theme carried on to the back as well. I was also able to help a friend finish a quilt that her mother-in-law had started, and she just needed help getting it quilted, and I did the binding for her. So this was a king-size quilt that I just worked on the binding for. So I'm gonna deliver this to her so she can give it to her husband as a gift coming up here. So that was a fun one to help with. So as you can see, I've been busy with other sewing projects that aren't quite the weekly or monthly quilt along blocks, but it feels good to get some projects actually finished. And so I'm going to show you now the progress of the blocks for the quilt alongs I'm still currently working on. So I had mentioned in my last progress video about the Swoon summer quilt along, and I have not made a whole lot of progress on this one. I did work on one block while I was in Montana because I wanted to start it, and so this is the only other sewing that I did while I was on my trip besides that big quilt. And so This is the All Hallows Eve fabric for the original Swoon block, and I might have to back up a little bit to see it. So this is a really large block, and I thought because it was larger it was going to be easier to piece than the Swoon 16 blocks that I had done a couple years ago, but the points are still the same to line up and work with, and so it does take a lot of effort to get the points from not being cut off and lining up, and so it's still going to be the longer process that I remember it being, but I think it's just a beautiful block, and I love the fabric in this one. So this is one I definitely want to pick up speed on. The actual sew along is coming to an end. I think this might be the last week at the time I'm filming it here, so I still have a ways to go. There's 9 blocks to make total for this top, so I know once the blocks are made, sashing them together and everything will be really simple, but I definitely want to gain some more momentum on this one. But 1 down, 8 to go. Here it is, a little more up close to see the fabric. This one was folded and put in my travel bag, so I need to press it again, but you can see the kind of taupey color with this dusty orange and the off-white, just really pretty all together. Love these fig tree fabrics. Alright, let's talk about Moda Blockheads 4 now. I am pretty far behind on this one. I think I have up to block 14 done at this point. They're up to block 20 right now, and I believe the 7th bonus block, so I have a lot of sewing to catch up on for this one, but I wanted to share my plan also for the layout. Corey Yoder recently published a really pretty layout that works well if you're just doing the larger 9-inch blocks, but I believe it only showcases 25 of them. It's kind of a 5 by 5, and so if you do all the blocks in this one, or if, like I'm doing, I'm swapping a few from Moda Blockheads 3, but I still want to end up with 36 blocks in the end. So I'm going to do a little bit of math to convert. I cut out part of the layout and taped it on to make sure I got all the piecing correct here. A 6 by 6 using Corey Yoder's layout. So I've got some fabric for that, and I want to put it together and make sure all my math works and everything before I share how I made the adjustments. But again, this is Corey Yoder's layout, and it just looks really beautiful with the accent fabric, and each block is framed nicely. So I'm excited to make it just a little bigger and use all the blocks. So let me go ahead and show you up close. I just have 3 of them that I've caught up on. Like I said, I still have quite a few more, but these ones are really fun, and I've used a lot of the same color in these ones, so I've mostly been mixing the colors, but I wanted to, because I'm doing a crayon box theme, wanted some that were predominantly one color, so I did get a couple of those in here. So let me show you up close. One of the nice things about being behind is that you can see the blocks that are coming up before you make the ones that you're currently on. And so I noticed that block 12, which is called Friendship Star, was very similar to block 16, the Indiana Puzzle, but the points were just kind of going in the opposite direction. But I noticed Indiana Puzzle had put these little 4-patch corner pieces, whereas Friendship Star, it looks like this. Here's a clean copy. Again, looked very similar. It was just the diagonals were going in a different direction on those half square triangles. So I ended up combining them because I just, again, wanted some different looks. And so this is block 12 and 16 combined. It has the 4-patch corners, which is in the Indiana Puzzle block, but it is facing the direction or angled like the Friendship Star block. So instead of doing block 16 and having one that's kind of similar, I will be doing a Blockheads 3 block. This will be another swap that I changed the math up on to get it to 9 inches. So I'm going to be doing this block here called Starry Eyed by Corey Yoder. So I haven't made that one yet, but that's the plan to do instead of block 16. But this one, when I was in Montana, I picked up some more purple fabric. I mentioned before I don't have a lot of purple, and it was hard to find kind of what seemed like a true purple to me, or a violet. And so I did find some that I thought looked nice together, and so this is the one that I used predominantly purples for. This one is my predominantly red block, and it's called Evening Delight by Debbie Maddie. This is block 13. And I also did the block 14 alternative. There was an applique bird, which I just didn't feel like doing the applique, and I was also noticing that the blocks I've been swapping were like a berry and a leaf, so things that resembled actual objects. So I decided to go with the alternative called Sharply Dressed, and I just did a mix of color in this one. Now let's take a look at a Quilting Life's block of the month for the July block. As I've mentioned before, this block releases once a month on Thursdays, the first Thursday of the month, and so this one has a star with a pinwheel inside of it, and it's using that Daisy May fabric from Poppy Cotton. I actually found when we were in Montana some coordinating backing for it. I haven't been able to find this online anywhere because it's an older line, but leave it to the fabric stores to have some, so I wasn't sure how much backing would be needed, but if it's not enough, I can do a pieced backing later. But I was really happy to find the matching navies and strawberries and the little flowers in there. So that'll look really nice when it's all finished. Finally, I'm going to show you my progress on the Heartfelt quilt along. This is the last block in the Heartfelt quilt along. It has the Flower Sugar Rose Kiss fat quarter bundle and then the Beautiful Day fabric for the background. And I had noticed when I was looking at the preview of the blocks that it was going to take some larger pieces of fabric to make this one, so I had set aside some fat quarters to make sure there'd be enough for this one. And it was nice because I have some of this white background fabric that I didn't want touching the white Beautiful Day fabric, and so it's nice and enclosed in these vivid colors here. So I was happy to have a block that could showcase some of the white fabric as well. So this block is called Precious, and there are 5 of them. So here's the first. And there's the 5th. This was the last block for this top, and the final release for the top is just the finishing, which has already come out, so I just need to put all of these hearts together in their columns and rows and get all the sashing pieces in there to complete it. There's also another release coming out with a backing with a star that's pieced in it. Instead of doing that, I'm going to be building a pieced backing using all the bonus blocks that came out of the blocks that I've made. So I have all kinds of sizes and pieces here, and I'm just going to figure out some kind of design or maybe a few different blocks with all these pieces to see what I can come up with to do a pieced backing. So I will actually be finished with this one hopefully by the end of August or early September, but won't be waiting for that final release. So I've actually have everything that I need now to complete the top, and so on my next update I should be able to show you that. As always, thank you for watching and just checking in on my progress on all these quilt alongs and just other projects I've been working on as well. Remember, you can see my progress sooner by following either my Facebook or Instagram account. And again, I appreciate you liking and subscribing these videos if you'd like to see more like this. I'll see you next time.